Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Love Your Dogs podcast. Making sure my mic was on. My name is bredrake. I am a nature aligned dog health educator, and I'm also a certified holistic pet health coach. And I'm adding something else to my bag of tricks very soon. Well, starting on the journey really soon. It'll be a 2-year journey, but I cannot wait for that. You just get me today. I don't have any guests. I figured it was a good time to kind of pause and catch up on everything here myself, one on one with you guys. And on the note of my next big, I don't think it's called a certification. My next big educational adventure. On that note, I just want to remind people who I am and what I'm doing now, where I'm at. So I, as you know, lost 2 dogs to cancer, but before that, before embarking on this holistic journey, I was to go way back. I was an accountant. I worked in finance. I worked for a big public accounting firm. I then worked for Verizon for 6 years. I have a master's in business, a bachelor's in accounting, met my husband. He was in a different state than me. I lived in Florida at the time. He lived in South Carolina, and he moved me up to South Carolina. And when I was starting the interview in South Carolina for similar jobs, for finance and accounting jobs, he sat me down and was like, this is a perfect, you hated that. You hated that life. This is a perfect time to start pursuing something different, something you love. And he's always had that entrepreneur mindset. He started his own business and it's very successful. So he's kind of pushed me to become that over the years. And I pursued photography for a while. That was my big hobby while I was doing accounting and finance work. I did photography on the side for family and for friends. And I always loved wildlife photography. So I pursued that for a little bit. And my first business outside of, working in the corporate world was doing dog photography, actually. And to get more experience doing that and exposure and getting experience taking photos of lots of different dogs of all different shapes, sizes, temperaments. I volunteered at my local animal shelter once a week for a couple of hours and took photos of all of their dogs to just give them better photos to make them more adoptable, really capture their personalities instead of these cold, sad pictures of them in their kennels or their cages, kennels, whatever you call them. So that was awesome. And then I did a handful of sessions with families with their dogs, but then COVID happened and it made it really difficult to get together. And we ended up moving away from a bigger city and spending a lot more time on a farm because we had to separate and isolate and keep our distance, right? So that kind of fell apart. But through that journey of photography, I was exploring, I wanted to create a brand and a logo for that company. So I reached out to a few designers that I liked and quickly learned that I couldn't afford it. It was really expensive. So I thought, you know what? I have all of this experience with Adobe, which is like a creative application or a bunch of creative applications under Adobe, Adobe umbrella. And I knew how to use Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Lightroom for photography needs. So I thought, you know what? I already have this artistic ability deep down, even though I did all of this, you know, different part of my brain accounting work for so long. I could teach myself how to do this graphic design. I could teach myself how to use the software. So I did that. And through that, I just started making, my other hobbies, fly fishing. You guys may have caught on to that. I don't share a whole lot of it on Tailswell Health account on Instagram, but that's my main hobby. That's what I enjoy doing with my husband, with my dogs, now with Pine. And I just started doing hand drawn illustrations with an iPad and Apple Pencil and learned how to move those fly fishing and nature inspired illustrations into Adobe Illustrator, make them beautiful, and create great graphics for businesses, logos, branding, and then also for apparel designs. So that was my business for the last several years, and I'm still holding on to it a little bit because it does pay the bills while I pursue this passion, which I love. And as time goes on, it's just been a journey. It's been an evolution. So as time goes on, I'm moving more and more away from that and focusing here on what I love. And I'm excited. I've been ready to be done with graphic design for probably 2 or 3 years now. Even before the holistic health stuff came up, I was just kind of conflicted because I really care about the environment. I'm a total nature nerd, and I just something felt didn't feel right being someone, fast fashion contributes a lot to the waste that's sitting on our planet. Might be one of the biggest contributors. And I'm doing work for these companies while I love these brands and while I'm thankful for them giving me a job, giving me financing my life, giving me helping me earn a living. I just felt icky creating these designs that go on these hats and shirts and things that are just going to be thrown away and ending up in our landfills. So anyway, I digress. So I was feeling conflicted about that, started pursuing a home goods business where I was going to put my design work on some home goods, some high quality home goods, mostly wallpaper. I really love doing pattern work. So I was going to create some really, environmentally friendly, long lasting wallpaper. And that made me feel better in my soul that people would get something that would last a long time instead of buying a shirt or a hat that they'd maybe wear for a couple of months before the next season of new apparel came out. So that just felt better in my soul. I invested time and money into that business. And then that's when Anne got diagnosed with cancer, and then Skip, and then I lost both of them. And then it was just like a light bulb went off. And ever since, I just know there's nothing better that I could be doing, that I'm meant for this role, for shedding light on what's happening with our dogs and letting all of you know that there are options besides what our conventional vets are telling us. I'm sorry if a lot of this is re redundant or repetitive, but I always believed that the vets down the street were the only option that we had. And some vets were probably better than others, but I had no idea that there were holistic vets and homeopathic vets and even integrative vets. So what I'm doing here just it feels so good because I know that had I known there were other options, I would have made some better choices for my dogs. And I know that for me, it did take watching my dog's health decline and then ultimately losing them to cancer to finally say, okay, I need to make some changes. So even though I've said this a million times, I really admire those of you who are here being proactive, who haven't gone through that heartbreak, who haven't had to learn the hard way. And I want to acknowledge too that I'm not none of this is guaranteeing more years of life or longevity, but it is guaranteeing that our dogs have better quality of life. We never know what could happen. I mean, I don't even like to talk about this, but we're on the road. We do a lot of risky things with Pine. We let him adventure. We let him live a full life. Anything could happen any day outside of, being like an internal health problem. Like something awful could happen to him at any time, but the goal is to give them the best lives possible, not hold them back, not keep them in a bubble, not keep them inside, not control and micromanage every movement. So everything that I'm talking about here, this is the first dog that I've raised 100% holistically and naturally. And I still don't know if that's going to be enough to keep him from getting cancer at, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have no idea still. There's so many things that we can't control. So I want to make that clear that what we're doing is in hopes of having our dogs around longer. But what's most important is that their quality of life is better. There's lifespan and then there's health span. So we want health span. We want them to be as healthy as possible, as long as possible. Because so many dogs, I've seen it with friends, with family online, they live to 16 years old, but for that last 4, 5 years, 3 years, they're miserable. They're hobbling around. They can't go on adventures anymore. They're itchy, they're tired, they're achy, they're in pain. So while that lifespan was extremely impressive, living to 16, to have a dog spend those last several years not healthy, it's just awful. And that leads into a whole other philosophical issue where I just don't think we should be using holistic measures, natural measures, longevity drugs, even in the human world. This is probably going too far, but even in the human world, it makes me sad to watch these people. Humans are living longer than ever, watching the elderly in and out of the hospital constantly for their last several years of life and calling that living till 95. That's great. But the last decade was miserable for them, going broke, spending money on surgeries and procedures and medication. So, um, anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I feel like the focus should be on health and quality of life and never just extending life. And that leads me to another point that I don't talk about often. If I could turn back time with my own guys, with Anne, with Skip, while Anne was given only 60 days to live because I declined conventional treatments for her cancer and she lived 9 more months, I think that there was easily a time at like the 5, 6 month line where I should have called it. And if it ever happened again, if I was ever in the position again, which hopefully I never am, I would have called it sooner just because I think that would have been more fair to her. And same with Skip. His situation was really tough because he had hemangiosarcoma, and with hemangiosarcoma, it's silent. It's seemingly non-existent. They'll have their episodes of a bleed where they'll get lethargic and then they bounce back or they don't. But what happened with Skip is he got lethargic. We took him to the vet. They removed his spleen. 3 weeks later, it moved to his heart. He had to have another procedure done to remove the fluid from around his heart. And it was at that moment where I'm like, how do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to keep having to rush him to the emergency vet every couple of weeks? And I really believed that we could extend his life, but it was honestly too far gone. It was hemangiosarcoma that had already metastasized, was already spreading, already in his liver when we discovered it, when they did the surgery. So I just, if I could turn back time, I might have made a different call, at least at the time where he had to have the fluid removed from around his heart. I might have said, this is the time to let him go peacefully. Um, but the hard part was that aside from those episodes, he was a happy, healthy dog. No soreness, still full of energy, playful, go, go, go. So it would have been extremely difficult to make that decision for a dog that was just still so full of life. That's the only tricky part. But the alternative, was that he did ultimately pass. He got weak at our home after chasing a ball. He stiffened, collapsed, went into shock. We loaded him in the car and he died in my arms on the way to an emergency vet visit. One of the most, just maybe the most traumatic moment of my life. And I feel weird that I'm actually talking about this in more detail because normally I can't do it without crying. But it was horrible. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going to go ahead and you can fast forward through this if you want, but just a little warning, disclaimer. Fast forward for the next couple of minutes if you don't want to hear the details. But we loaded him in the truck and he was just struggling more and more to breathe. And it was probably from the time he collapsed to the time he passed, maybe 10 minutes. We maybe made it 5, 6 minutes into our drive to the vet, and the vet was a good 15, 20 minutes away. He was just struggling more and more to breathe. And I just knew. I kept telling my husband who was driving, I was just sitting in the back seat, like, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. And I was just telling him, I'm so sorry over and over again. I love him over and over again. And there's one point where he sat up and just looked at me. And I'm like, I think that was his goodbye. It was the craziest thing. And I haven't said this out loud to anybody. But yeah, he just perked up and just looked me dead in the eyes like normal amidst all of the struggling he was having to breathe, the struggling, he just sat up and looked at me dead in the face. And that was the exact moment. I'm like, he's gonna go. He's gonna go for sure. So he laid back down and his breathing got more and more labored, which made me feel terrible. But wow, this is horrible. And I wish I would have made the decision to put him down more peacefully before that happened. It was so fast. It was really, really fast. And I just watched all of the color leave him because he had an internal bleed somewhere. I watched all the color leave. His ears were white, eyes were white, gums were white. And poor guy, I saw some pee trickle out. He did poop himself. So that was a lot of detail, but I think sometimes it's helpful to hear that. For those who've gone through it, you can relate. Maybe this is some kind of therapy for you listening to this, or just giving you an idea of what you can expect to be in that moment so it's not so scary and not so shocking. Because for me, I'd never heard anyone talk like this, never heard about it happening. I'm sorry, I heard about it happening plenty, but I've never heard anyone go into detail about what it looked like. So yeah, so he went out that way, and I have regrets around it. But like I said, it was just it's hard when he was literally fetching and playing with his ball 10 minutes before he just collapsed. So it's really difficult. I mean, he with Anne, she was so exhausted, and it was such a long, long journey and battle with cancer with her. And she was ready. And it was just so peaceful. We were ready. We had a long time to sit with it. But with Skip, it happened so fast. I mean, it was 6 weeks from taking him in from that for that surgery to when he passed. And I just couldn't imagine looking at a dog and him being happy and healthy and just looking at you like, what's going on? So I'm not gonna go too far into that because I'm gonna start crying. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful to some people because I know a long time ago when I had horses, I I had a great vet who I loved, and now maybe I wouldn't think he's so great, but years ago, I thought he was awesome. I really loved his visits and talking to him. But I asked him one time, I said, "What is the hardest part about your job?" And he said, the hardest part is convincing the horse owner not to be selfish when it's time to let their animal go." And I think that's the same for dogs, and, I don't think that's anything groundbreaking, but that fits in here. That stuck with me in my young, early 20s self. Sorry. I just thought I heard some dogs coming. I'm like, "I gotta prepare for Pine to start barking," but I didn't. So anyway, I just wanna share that tidbit. That's kind of wasn't planned, but we went there, and it's just me winging it today. So to get back on track, Jenny Richmond and her dog Birdie. That was last week's episode where we talked about Birdie's wonderful story. And I'm on the road and I'm kind of pressed for time. I'm kind of on this fishing, dog walking, hanging with friends schedule, vacation schedule while still trying to get work done. So when it comes time to do the podcast or any kind of content for Tailswell, it can be a little challenging, but I've been getting the podcast done. I got Jenny's recorded. I recorded her intro and outro, but I went through all the motions of getting it uploaded in all the places and realized that those didn't make it into the episode, which was fine. You guys probably didn't even notice, but I owe a little bit of extra time to her conversation because it was just so wonderful and I just love her and appreciate her being so brave to come and tell the story. But yeah, she was my very first consultation client. We talked about that. I did my holistic pet health coaching certification. In order to get certified, I had to do two real life consultations with real dogs and real humans. So she was the very first one. She took a chance on me and trusted me. And what a beautiful outcome. And I just love that she stayed so consistent. I love the example that, like the inspiration for a lot of you here listening who have dogs with serious conditions. And I love the consistency and the patience because that's the hardest thing, one of the hardest things when you take a holistic approach to caring for yourself or for your dogs, for your loved ones, is that it takes time. We're so used to conventional medicine, pharmaceuticals working like that, working, making the symptom go away. We're so used to that quick fix that it's really difficult working with people to one, get you to trust in that, and then get you to stay consistent and then patient and stick with it long enough to see it through. And then also stick with it and trust in it enough that you don't get led astray and opt for taking a conventional approach for a quicker fix and then taking several steps back. So I loved her story. I'm so proud of her. And some other things that we kind of talked about afterwards that I wanted to point out. She never when she first told me what had gone down, I'm like, I'm so excited for a million reasons, but I love that your vets are can see the power of herbal support and lifestyle support and, nutrition. I'm so happy they can see that because there's no denying what happened here with Bird. It was helpful because, they were going through the motions, doing the pharmaceuticals for a couple of years, seeing no improvement, things kind of staying the same, kind of up and down. And then as soon as we switched the food and got her on some great herbal support, some mushroom support, we started seeing gradual improvement all the way to where they're taking her off almost all of her meds besides just one. Um, but poor Jenny, and, this is a great approach. This is not wrong. This is a great approach that I encourage a lot of people who don't like confrontation, who are kind of people pleasers. This is a great approach. And you don't have to tell your vet what you're feeding. You don't have to tell them anything that goes on at home. And Jenny, I don't think she was fearful or worried about, overstepping or being confrontational. I think her approach was actually really smart, where she didn't want the vets to attribute anything or treat Birdie any differently because she was raw fed or, cast any kind of judgment. Like, it could have changed the treatment just because it would have been a shock to the vet's system to hear this, and they just can't help themselves. I've seen it several times where people will come to me with their dogs a specific condition, and they say, "Oh, the vet said it's because of the raw diet, because there's too much of this or too much of that," or and every time, whatever condition the dog is facing has nothing to do with being fed a raw diet, but the vets can't help themselves. They're so programmed to think that these raw diets are dangerous that they could fixate on that and blame something that they otherwise can't explain on the raw food. So I liked Jenny's approach because it could have changed how they worked with her and how they treated Birdie had they known. But now, like, well, maybe at some point you can share with them what you were doing, because it could really help change the perspective for those vets and change the way that they approach this and give them more tools to better help other dogs. So hopefully she'll get there. I mean, no pressure for her. I completely understand why she did that. But I just wanted to touch on that. And I also wanted to touch on, for anyone listening that might have a dog that's dealing with, let's see, I have the notes here, that's dealing with dilated cardiomyopathy, DCM. So Birdie was on 4 different medications, and the one she's still on is pemabendin. But in addition to the food, we also added in Amber Naturals. I think it's Heart Care, Hawthorn, and Dandelion. So the pemabendin's primary job is to help the heart pump more effectively and reduce some of the workload of the heart. So when we're thinking about the Amber Naturals, Hawthorn, and Dandelion, in terms of the goal of those herbs rather than the exact mechanisms, Hawthorn is the herb that overlaps most with the support the heart category. So traditionally, Hawthorn is used to support circulation and cardiovascular function and overall heart vitality. And then the dandelion is not really about the contraction, but more associated with fluid movement and gentle support of normal fluid balance. So that kind of overlapped with 1 or 2 of the other medications she was on. So, while this tincture isn't really a natural version of these drugs, there's overlap in the intention of the support, helping the body support the heart function while working towards overall resilience. So, just having that herbal support in the background, along with getting moisture and protein and good amino acids to support her heart, that's really all it took. It was so simple, so gentle, and over time, it was a year and a half from when we started to when she just got this wonderful news that she could be backed off all but one of the medications and that her heart is healed, according to her cardiologist. Um, it just, you just have to be patient. It's very gradual, very gentle. And I firmly believe Birdie's going to live out a long, normal life, when otherwise they would have just kept her on those meds. And at some point, her organs would have been too strained. At some point, that would have become the bigger issue had she stayed on those meds long term. So I'm just really thankful for how that all went down. It just makes me so happy, and I'm so glad that Jenny was willing to share that story here with everyone. Next on the list, still on the road, and I know I've gotten so many questions on Instagram from you guys about this whole trip. So I've talked about this before, but, my husband builds beautiful custom flats fishing boats. That's his business, and it's been really successful. And thanks to him and that successful business, I can do a lot of what I do now. And from a corporate woman, I'm still very much independently minded, but I need him. I definitely need him. I couldn't do what I do without his support. And he's just amazing. He pulled me out of just your typical corporate life where I was probably gonna do that until I retired, and I didn't travel a whole lot, and met him, and he had Anne, so I forgot to mention this. So he had Anne. Anne's 4 years older was 4 years older than Skip, and I had Skip, so we kinda came together like a little 101 Dalmatians couple. We had our 2 Goldens together. But yeah, he's just we have such a beautiful life together. I'm so thankful for it, and, um, I mentioned the boats because we had always wanted a truck called an earth roamer, but they are insanely expensive. We entertained the idea of getting a used one at one point, but it was still really, really expensive. And my husband said, "You know what? I think I can build one. I think I can build one for us." It's pretty much the same as the boats, same process, maybe a little different, and there were some things he had to learn along the way. And I was a little nervous, but I know he can do anything. He is so handy, can build anything, so brilliant. And he built this entire camper that we're in, and I know I've shared it on Instagram before, but it's just amazing. And everywhere we go, people think it's an earth roamer because it's based very much off of that. And it's just been awesome for us. We finished it in 2022 because so we started coming out west the first year we were dating. We flew out here and rented a Tacoma with a rooftop tent. It was just the two of us, no dogs. We flew and we spent 4 days out here and just we fell in love. And then the next year, we got our own Tacoma and we bought our own rooftop tent. And we drove that little Tacoma with the 2 Goldens in the back all the way out here again and spent a lot of time in Southwest Montana. And we eloped. We eloped in Montana, which was so cool. But we spent 2 weeks driving around in that Tacoma in a rooftop tent. And now this luxury that we travel in, I'm like, how did we do that? We were so hardcore back in the day. I mean, and to get married too, living out of a tent was crazy. I mean, we went up in the mountains where it was really remote. We had an officiant meet us and a photographer, and I brought my dress and all my things up in the truck, and I got ready beside the truck. And I'll put a link to the blog post on our elopement story with all the details that I put together several years ago. Put a link in the show notes for any of you hopeless romantics that are interested in that. So yeah, we've just been coming out here every year, and every year we try to stay longer and longer. It just gets really hot and humid and miserable in South Carolina. And being major dog people, we don't have kids yet. We're like for the dogs. We got to come out here where it's dry and cool, not only for us but for the dogs. They're miserable there. Pine hates the cold. I flew across the country and got him from Northern California, so I think he's just a California boy at heart, so he really, really hates the heat in South Carolina. So we come out here, we escape the heat. We both, love fly fishing. I mentioned that earlier. This is a different style. We're mostly saltwater fly fishermen, fly fisher women, but we we freshwater fish out here on a river for brown trout and rainbow trout. And before we built the truck, we actually built a little drift boat. So that's the boat you guys see us floating in, rowing down the river and Pine's hanging out in the back. So yeah, so we do that. Lots of fishing and hanging out. And where else was I going to go with that? Oh yeah, I just want to talk about some of the logistics of bringing the dog out here and raw feeding and all of that. So I have a subscriber group on Instagram, and if you don't know about it, you can subscribe. It's only $9.99 a month. It's very inexpensive, but you basically get access to me every day. And I have has a group message. It's like a direct message, but a group message, kind of like a group text message in Instagram in direct message format. So if you're a subscriber, you can join that and we'll all, ask questions, share advice, share successes, share whatever. And it's really, really great. It helps me to help a lot more people at once. I do one-on-one consultations also. I've kind of paused them right now until I get into more of a rhythm out here on the road. I know I've had some questions about that come through an email, so I apologize, but I haven't. I have to figure out what times of day would work best right now once we get a little more structured here, if that ever happens. So there's the subscriber group. I get so many direct messages every day, and I used to try and answer a lot of them, but now I can't. I've acknowledged that it's just not possible, and it's not fair to me to spend that time. It's not fair to me and to everyone else to spend that one-on-one time for free answering people online. And I think people mean well. I think people assume that These questions are going to be quick and easy, but every dog is different. Every question should be approached carefully, and I need to know some little bit of a dog's history, at least, preferably as much as possible before making recommendations. So the subscriber chat, the Tailswell pack chat. So you can subscribe. Oh, goodness gracious. You can subscribe. If you go to my profile on Instagram, you can subscribe. And then also you can on my profile, like the little bio section, it says Tailswell pack chat. And that's where you can join the chat. So that's great. If you're someone that's been direct messaging me and I haven't got back to you, that is a good place to go and ask questions because it allows the other members of the group to see my response and learn as well. And then the consultations, again, I hopefully will be um, opening those back up soon. And why I mentioned all of that is because there's a lot of great questions that come up in that group. And there's been a couple lately. I mean, it's summer, people are traveling where people are asking for advice on how best to travel when you're feeding your dog a raw diet. And the best way, especially if you're just going for a few days to a week or so, is to do freeze dried raw. It's expensive and it's not my favorite. It still retains a lot of the good nutrients. You definitely have to rehydrate it, whether that be with bone broth, raw goat's milk, or herbal tea. You want to rehydrate the food for sure. But yeah, on that note, it's not my first choice for use long term because there is so much value in that real living hydration in raw food. But in a pinch, and I've actually fed Pine a few air dried meals this trip, no freeze dried, but air dried foods, freeze dried foods, those are great for your shorter trips, your few days, your week to 2 weeks. Our dogs are going to be just fine on that. That's the easiest way to travel with the raw food. Um, if you want to bring some pre made raw, that's like the next easiest way. It would depend on your situation. So we have our camper and we have a fridge and freezer. It's very small RV size, but I think I was able to bring about 2 weeks worth of food out here with us. I just ordered some, and we have some great friends here in town who they come stay with us in December and they do laundry, use our shower, ship things to our house. So we kind of do the same thing while we're out here. We'll ship things to their house, we'll do laundry. And I just took a full shower. We have a shower in our truck, but it felt good to just take a nice longer shower at their house. So we kind of do that. So I shipped some food to their house recently. I order from Fresh Fur Pets. I'll put them in the show notes. That's who I order Solutions pet products from. So I ordered a big bulk box of 20-pound chubs. I just ordered that recently to get me through another week or two. And I brought some other things along in the freezer to make some DIY meals and to incorporate some raw meaty bones. So I brought some duck wings, some sardines, some liver, some rabbit heads, maybe green tripe in there as well. So I brought what I could to kind of get us by for the first few weeks to a month. And I ordered from Fresh Fur Pets online, some Solutions pet products, but I probably will do another raw feeding Miami order here soon because I want to do a mix of at home. I do a mix of Solutions pet products and then I do DIY raw meals where I source from all over all different places and can switch it up, add variety, incorporate bones. So that's the program we're on. We have the fridge and freezer. I've just kind of been strategic about making sure I pay attention to when he's running out. I order it and ship it to our friend's house. Or if we are actually mobile and moving and not stationary in one place, usually we can find a specialty pet food store somewhere along the route where I can pick up some pre-made from there. Or, there's always the grocery store. You can always get some chicken wings, some usually chicken hearts or livers, eggs, and different, pork, chicken, beef, ground, whatever. You can always rely on that too. But most people, I'd say, are doing a long road trip and staying somewhere. So for the road trip, I say, you can have, I like to only thaw out maybe 3 to 4 days worth of food at a time. I don't like it to be thawed out much longer than that. So you could have some of that thawed out in a normal cooler and then have a cooler with some dry ice. A lot of grocery stores offer dry ice now. I would call around first just to be sure. But you can put the dry ice in a cooler and keep the other food frozen until you get to where you are to where you can put it. in a freezer. So those are just some tips for traveling. And you can also, from a raw meaty bone perspective, you can bring dehydrated parts and pieces. I know from um, real dog box, I've got some dehydrated duck heads and some dehydrated like liver and pork spleen, things like that are crunchy and like can help brush and scrape mechanically and give him some good chewing. So that's another option too, is to bring some of those freeze dried or dehydrated chew type things to incorporate. So yeah, so Pine's food. Another thing I really wanted to touch on because, you know, you guys know, vaccines are tricky. And also, it's easy to go the no vaccine route or minimal vaccine route when you're just home all the time. Everything's predictable. A lot of people online that talk about not doing vaccines, they don't really take their dogs many places besides their own properties or their own homes. So I like to share what we're doing so you can see that it is possible to still get out and be social with your dogs and take them places. I mean, Pine's, gosh, she's been everywhere. Um, Gas stations, little like downtown areas, campgrounds. I mean, he's been all over the place since he was a little guy. And yeah, it's taken some bravery on my part to do that because I really don't see anyone who has this lifestyle going as hard as we do, like going and traveling. So I've just kind of wanted to share how we navigate this. And I basically keep everything the same, but I am very mindful, especially because out here, out west, there's a lot more off leash dogs, which I think is great. I love that dogs are off leash. I hate leashes personally. I love Pine being off a leash, but what I've learned is that they're off leash. They've kind of grown up that way, and I love that. But a lot of people don't have full control over their dogs off leash, which is okay if you have friendly dogs that get along. And Pine, super friendly, super soft, super sweet. He's intact though, so it's been interesting. Some dogs he does interact differently, or dogs interact differently with him because he's intact. And maybe it's because I'm just extra worried because I've never had a dog intact for this long. But yeah, for the most part, he's met a ton of dogs and there just hasn't been anything negative. But I just wanted to touch on the off leash thing where I want dogs to have off leash freedom. And I plan to bring on some trainers in the near future to talk about this, to talk more professionally about how you can achieve this. But we need to have control over our dogs if they're going to be off leash. There's plenty of countries, I think in Europe, there's a lot of countries that actually don't really even have leash laws. Most dogs walk around at heel off leash. So it can be done, but here in the States, we're micromanaging. We're worried, we're stressed, and we keep our dogs on leashes. And I honestly think that makes them more reactive with the off leash stuff. You guys have seen how hard I've worked with Pine. So since he was a puppy stage is the best time to start off leash work because they just want to be next to you. They just want to follow you. They want to be everywhere you are. They can't go far. They're not very fast yet. So I just started that since he was a puppy. We walk in the woods, shorter walks, obviously, and I would just make him come check in, carry treats, call him to here, practice recall. And we've started that since day one. And then as soon as he hit 6, 7 months, I started introducing e-collar work and I followed some of Tom Davis of No Bad Dogs. I followed some of his work, training videos online to learn how to introduce him to an e-collar and use it effectively. And then we've done so much place training and impulse control work. Place training has been huge, being on place when there's other kids, people, dogs, critters, walking him in the woods at home and practicing on safer prey, some deer in this open area where he's not going to get any trouble. It was great to give him that exposure because just this morning, this is in my Instagram stories today, but this will air in a few days. But just this morning, we ran into a moose, and I knew we would. We walk this beautiful, beautiful trail in the mornings here, and I like to go really early because, like I mentioned, there's a lot of dogs here, a lot of off leash dogs, and it's quieter and there's less likely to have to run into other dogs when I go early. But going early also means there's more critters moving around. So I knew we'd run into a moose, and I was excited because I want to see a moose, but I also wanted it to be just the way that it worked out today. Luckily, we didn't actually like stumble upon him and get trampled, right? we we actually walked by him on the way out. He was tucked in this little pocket of trees, and we had walked by those trees on the way out. I had no idea he was there. He was probably bedded down. He knew we were there, but we walked right by that patch of trees, turned back around about 20, 30 minutes later, and he was in there eating. And I was like, "Oh my god, we literally just walked past there." But anyway, last year when Pine was 8 months out here, we didn't do that kind of trail walking because he definitely did not have his impulse control down. But this year I fully trusted him. I've not been worried walking around out there with deer, with bunnies, with birds, the moose even. I trust him now because we worked so hard on that, and if you saw in those videos, he was perfect. He just sat, he looked at it, he saw it, and, he just listened to me, and it's the same with other dogs. When other dogs are coming down that trail, I make them come to heel, I make them sit, and we wait till the dog passes. But on that note, if there's any trainers that happen to listen to this, I feel like I may be taking the wrong approach with that because sometimes dogs will approach our campsite and we'll tell them, "Sit, wait," and we'll let the dog get closer and then tell him, "Okay," and then he just runs at the dog, like, full of excitement, not aggression, just excited to play, and then the other dog's like, "Oh my god," and usually, like, running from him. So that's something I'm like, I gotta figure that out. I don't think I'm taking the right approach with that, but when we're out in the trail, I like to have him sit next to me, and I wait for people to walk by. But in situations where we have campsite visitors that wander up, I'm just wondering if, we're kind of loading him like a spring by making him sit there and wait and then just letting him go. So we're working on that. He's super sweet and friendly, for an intact dog. People say they're so aggressive, but he just, he is very excited about his greetings, and that's a golden for you. I know that's a really hard something hard to work out of a golden, especially when they're less than 2 years old, but that's the other thing we're working on. So any trainers, if you wanna reach out to me on what I could do better, my thought is putting him on his place and rewarding him when he's calm and letting him off his place, but I think that might have the same effect, telling him free. So anyway, it's been something to deal with, something, I think about and I'm careful about because of vaccine status. If you're choosing to not vaccinate your dog or not stay current, you want to not put yourself in situations where the status is going to be questioned. That's the best advice I could give to you on that. So for me, being out here in all these situations where there are other dogs, it's extra added layer of responsibility because if there was a fight where there was an injury to either dog, both dogs would be questioned. So have to be really careful. So I'm trying not to be too hypervigilant that I'm stressed and I try to be very relaxed about his encounters. I try to avoid them. I try to avoid the encounters with the other dogs as much as possible. But if they do happen, I just try to be calm and let them do their thing because I feel like when they feel us being worried, that makes it worse. So that's just been something interesting to navigate. And off leash is great. I want dogs to have off leash freedom. That's so happy and healthy for them. And there is ways to do it right. And I think everyone should do it right because I know there's people listening who have reactive dogs and are like, God, I hate when an off leash dog runs up to me and the person's saying they're friendly, they're friendly. It's like, well, my dog is on a leash and reactive or frightened, and your dog's just flying up to them. So it's important. It's really important to have control of your dog. That's why I love e-collars because he listens great to my voice. But there could be moments where he has an adrenaline rush, doesn't want to listen, and I'll give him that opportunity to listen to my voice. But if he doesn't, I have that backup. And I know people have their own opinions on e-collars. I like to do all things natural as much as possible, but I do think an e-collar for a dog who's adventurous and in settings like Pine, it's a must and it is a game changer. So anyway, wanted to talk a little bit about that. And then the boat, we traveled a lot with Skip and Ann, and we'd come out here. Gosh, Skip and Ann were probably out here 5 or 6 summers, and they rode in the boat a lot, but it was chaos with those two. So there's 3 seats in the drift boat. The front, the middle is where the rower sits. The front is where I usually am fishing, or my husband and I will switch and take turns. I do a lot of rowing too. I know doesn't look like it because my husband he's a husband, normal husband who doesn't take many pictures and videos, but we take turns rowing. And then there's a back seat, which usually can have another person fishing, but in our case, it's mostly just Pine. And with Skip and Ann, they used to be wherever they wanted on the boat. Gosh, my hair is crazy, guys. I'm sorry I keep messing with it. It's just like tickling my face. But Skip and Ann, yeah, they would go wherever they wanted in the boat, and I would be fishing. They would both be at my feet. And when you're fly fishing, you're stripping out line onto the floor. So they would constantly be getting tangled up in my line. If there was a fish caught, they were all in the way. Pine still, I'm going to get to how he is, but he'll still get excited about a fish too. But yeah, Skip and Anna get excited about fish. They learned that the sound of the anchor dropping usually meant we were pulled over on the side and they can hop out and run around on the bank and play like you've seen Pine doing. So they would get really anxious and just overexcited about the anchor dropping. Skip would just bail out of the boat sometimes in the middle of the river and be floating down the river. We'd have to like row up to him and bring him back in. I mean, they were chaotic. So having lived through that, we knew with Pine there was a lot of things we wanted to work on and train to make our lives better on the boat. I mean, I loved it. I kind of miss the chaotic life with both of those 2 in the boat, but it has also been nice to have Pine so trained. So we've trained him to stay in the back of the boat. We keep a cooler on one side of the rower seat and a turtle box, like a big speaker on the other side. So he's got a visual line in the back of the boat. So last year when we brought him out here as a puppy, he had to stay back there. This year he kind of settled right back into it where he just stays in the back of the boat and we just stay really consistent with that. We don't let him stand on the gunnels even though he does that a lot. We stay really consistent with all of those things. And he slips up, but I know in time when he's a full adult, he's going to be so so great in the boat. I mean, he's already worlds better than Skip and Ann were. But when we do catch a fish, he does get excited. And he also, I mentioned this on my chat with Judy Comer, the Devon dog lady. He he's definitely in that hormonal teenage stage, year and 8 months old, where he just he's doing something weird right now, where he won't settle. He's got so much FOMO. So he'll be in the back of the boat, and you guys have seen the videos on Instagram if you follow on Instagram where he's dead tired in the truck every day. Every day, as soon as he gets in the truck with us, he passes out because he's in the boat all day, thinks he's part of the team. He's fishing with us, he's standing, and he will hardly sit. He will not sleep on the boat. Skip and Ann, they were older. Skip was 3 the first year we came out here, Ann was 7, so they were both older, and they would nap on the boat, but Pine, no napping. He's gotta be up and awake for everything, and yeah, he gets to the truck and just falls out, so we've been working through that too. We've been trying to encourage him to lay down. We put a towel back there. We haven't found it yet. It's like maybe we just have to wait on him to figure out like if he is tired enough, he'll finally lay down and go to sleep and get some rest. Because I'll feel bad. I'll feel bad for the little guy that he's just on the whole time, but he's intact. He's young. He's a golden retriever, and that's just the way of it. But we try to give him some structure while we're out there, so it's not just a free for all. Um, and on another note too, it is so dry and bright and sunny out here. There's no fleas or ticks. That has been amazing, and that just goes I'm thinking I told my husband, I said, "You know what? I feel like there's probably a lot of people who live here who keep their dogs on preventatives completely unnecessarily because Pine, it's not even no essential oils, no sprays, no collars, no topicals, no no conventional preventatives, no fleas, no ticks on this dog since we've been out here. We picked up a few ticks throughout the drive at different campgrounds in the middle of the country, and he still had some fleas because I know we brought a few from home, but we've just kind of been combing him like every other day just to check and nothing, which has been beautiful because you guys know I've been going through it. So just wanted to touch on how remind you that you don't have to have your dog on these flea and tick medications. Really think about what's going on where you live. If you're not seeing fleas or ticks at all, chances are you probably don't even need them to be on those preventatives. So always something to think about. If you're traveling and want to use some Wondercide spray or Wondercide collar to protect your dog for a little bit while you're traveling, you can totally do that. But if you live somewhere, if your yard is bright and sunny and doesn't have a lot of shade or moisture and stays dry, you probably don't need it. You probably don't need flea and tick prevention. So just wanted to mention that. And Goodness, let me make sure there's nothing else I wanted to talk about. Yeah, we've just been having a great time. I've been trying been trying to stay on track with educational content. I've been keeping up with the subscriber chat. And I mentioned in a post last week that there is something I am working on. It's a goal of mine this summer to get it done that is going to help, dissolve a lot of fear and a lot of overwhelm. I just feel like people find my account and find what I have going on, and it can be overwhelming. So I'm trying to get more organized, and because the goal is to help as many people as possible. And I'm not helping if it's overwhelming. And I can just tell by the questions I get in direct messages that although I have story highlights that are nice and organized, although I have this podcast that's organized, and my posts are kind of all over the place, I get a lot of the same questions and people are just they don't know where to begin. So I'm working on something that's going to be very helpful and I can't wait to get that done. So I'm trying to finish up my last couple of graphic design projects and then really diving into that. So yeah, be on the lookout for it. And Pines Potion, I haven't talked about that here. Gosh, I that was so crazy successful. I'd shared about Pines Potion a little bit in my stories when I first started making it. I sold the first batch pretty quickly just to you guys, to people who watched my Instagram stories, to anyone on my email list. I let you guys know about it first. And then the second batch, I just put up a reel, an Instagram reel, and I just had this feeling that I'm like, I'm making this by hand. I can't really make a lot at a time, and I'm like, I just have this feeling this reel is gonna go viral, and I'm gonna be like, "Oh, I wish I could have sold all of it, had so much more." So that's what happened. I didn't have very many. I put up a reel that went super viral, and then, I sold out quickly and was slaving away getting everything shipped out before we left on our trip. And I was just bummed because I created all this demand and momentum, and I'm like, "Well, I'm sorry it's sold out, and you have to wait until I get back in a couple of months." But still gonna do it. My husband and I were brainstorming ways we could scale a little bit to make more. I have a huge wait list for it. So I appreciate everyone that supported that. I like to give back in every way I can to our dogs and the pet wellness industry is just saturated with garbage supplements and lots of people doing the food already. Food is something I would never touch even though I love incorporating whole foods. So I wanted to come up with something that I could give back that I really believed in, that I was using for Pine already, and that I could feel good about because it's handmade and 100% natural, no synthetics, no garbage in it, and it's something that could help sustain what I have going here, can help give me a little more support to keep this going. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys buying it, sharing about it, and hopefully I can get some more made when I get back. And you'll be the first to know. I'll let everyone know here. Anyone on my email list will know about it. So I just wanted to give an update on that and thank everyone for being supportive because yeah, the more support I get, the longer I can keep at this and the more good work I can do. So I really appreciate that. And for podcasts, so this is podcast number 25. And I was thinking before I left that I was going to pause podcasts because, as I mentioned at the beginning, it does take some work. I'm still a one woman team. I always say that I'm not proud of that. Hopefully, I'll get to a point where I can bring in some help with some of the more detailed things. But yeah, for right now, I'm a one woman show. So I'm recording this podcast. I will have to go back and edit it and get it posted, do all the links, all of the things. So it takes a lot of work, especially out here. We're in a different time zone. We're in mountain time, so 2 hours behind where I usually am, and we never really know what we're doing every day, which is beautiful. It's a good thing. It's fun, it's flexible, but it's just tough. There could be something. My husband, he has employees, so he can be away. He does work really hard from his computer, ordering and keeping things in line, and he kind of wears all the hats in his business too, but he does have a few employees that do a lot of the hands-on boat building stuff now. So when he comes out here, he's got a few things to do on his computer here and there, but other than that, he's like, "I want to go have fun. Let's go do this." So stopping to do the podcast and the consultations can be a little hard to work into our day, especially if, like, the fishing's good or something. My husband's giving me a hard time, but, so anyway, I'm working through that. And since this is number 25, and since I sort of can, entertain the idea of pausing these while we were away, I may just do that. This may be the last one for a little bit. And I say it's a huge maybe because I do have a few guests floating around out there that haven't committed to a time and they could commit to next week or the following week. So if that happens, I will jump back in and do another podcast. And who knows, there may be something that happens, something that triggers me to want to do another one of these where I'm talking by myself and that could happen. But for now, I'm going to say 25 is a good, good clean number to stop at for now, to stop at with season 1 of Love Your Dogs. But I'm not saying that I won't do more. On that note, yeah, here I am all by myself going strong for 55 minutes. Oh, there's one other thing. I don't know a whole lot about this, so I shouldn't even bring it up, but screwworms. I've had some folks in the pack chat ask about screwworms. That's the new boogeyman is what I'm calling that. And if you're worried about it, don't be. It's just another one of those things, kind of like the viruses with us, the hantavirus, however you say it. There's always got to be a boogeyman to create some fear, to create a little drama, and create some kind of treatment, some kind of vaccine, some kind of preventative. So, from what I've learned at quick glance about the screwworms, is just treat your dog the same way you already are, whether you're using conventional preventatives or using natural stuff. Just keep your dog strong and resilient. Feed them well. Give them plenty of exercise, plenty of love and connection and sunshine. Check them every day. Do a good once over their whole body every day for any open cuts or sores, and keep an eye on them. And use natural repellents to keep the flies and mosquitoes off your dog. But nothing to panic about. I've had some panicked messages about it. And it's just, again, the next boogeyman and nothing to worry about so long as you're already doing the foundational stuff and protecting your dog in that manner. Um, yeah, a healthy, resilient dog is the best prevention when it comes to those kinds of things. So I think that is all. Thank you guys for listening to all of that. There's a lot going on there. I kind of went all over the place, but I think it would probably feel good for some of you guys to get to know me a little better, get to know a little bit more about our trip out here. We'll probably be on the move again in a week or so. I think we're going to go even further west to Oregon for a bit and see how that goes. But we'll be back here in Montana for 4th of July. I don't know if anyone's ever been out here for 4th of July, but it is the most America place to be, and we really like it. We do a rodeo. There's a parade in town, so yeah. So we'll be back here for 4th of July, and at some point, my husband will probably fly back for 1 week or he might fly back once or twice. We're trying to stay out here as long as possible to stay away from the heat. Last year, our house had just finished being built. We still had a lot of projects. There's still a lot of like novelty around the new house, but we were still like, it was so hot and miserable. We got back mid-July and we still had to make it through half of July and all of August in the miserable heat. So this year we're thinking we might as well just stay out here where it's cooler and drier. And he may have to fly back to help get his employees started on some things a couple of times. So during those weeks, I will be grinding hard. Pine and I will still be doing our nature walks and such, but I will be back to full-time work here and tackling that special project I was telling you guys about. So thank you for listening to all that, and I hope you're okay with just being me this week. I will have some more guests maybe soon, and yeah, love your dogs.